There's a lot of noise coming off your mic
Is it? Okay. It's because I have a
whenever
paper
you're
clip.
moving around. Okay.
So, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. And tonight we are pleased to welcome you to an evening of Irish inspired music brought to you by the talented Ian Bell and by our corporate sponsors this evening, Mummery and Company Real Estate Brokerage, our neighbors located at 23 Harbor Street in Port Dover. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who's donated so far. We've actually raised about $900 for the museum, which is phenomenal. So we can't thank you enough. And for anyone who enjoys the music this evening and chooses to donate, head over to our Eventbrite site and look for the Port Dover Harbor Museum Schooners and Shamrock event. And that page will be open until March 20th. So, um, I'd like to thank this evening's performer who is donating his talents to the museum and to help us raise funds. And as you know, Ian is a talented musician, artist, and historian, and he's an all-around just great person. So we always love having Ian at the museum, and it's my pleasure to introduce him this evening.
Thank you, Angela. Well, heck, let's get started. What did I want to? That would have been so good if I'd remembered what tune to play right at the beginning. That was to start off with some Irish tunes, and that's kind of the theme here tonight is Irish music and the Great Lakes, and there's an awful lot of crossover. So that was I realized that what that was it's the Surf and Turf medley. It's a tune. It's a jig called the Bank of Turf, and then I went into a reel called Ships Are Sailing. And that's kind of the theme for tonight. Is songs of the Great Lakes that have an Irish connection, and there are plenty of them. Let me tell you, because a lot of the singing traditions of the Great Lakes sailors, especially during the time of sail, came from the Irish folk singing traditions. That was all around them, and there were lots of people of Irish descent working on the lakes, and it was a popular part of the music that was all around them in the province as well. And I'm going to start off with a song here that I often start off with. It's one that, like a lot of these songs, was collected by a guy named Ivan Walton back in the 1930s, who spent quite a few summers driving around both sides of all the Great Lakes with his notepad, and later, once he got to know Alan Lomax, he had a whatever passed for a tape recorder in those days, and he went around to old folks' homes and dockside bars and people's houses, and he interviewed these guys who were the last generation of sailors to work under canvas on the Great Lakes, and he collected a huge body of songs from these singers. And this is one of the first one of those that I ever learned. A friend of mine named Barry O'Neill, who was a folk singer, gave me a typescript copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a carbon copy of Ivan Walton's manuscript of these songs, and I started finding these wonderful songs in them. And this is one that he collected from Captain Jeremiah Kavanaugh, good name, who also provided him with a lot of songs. And it's a song about how it's better to work on the lakes than on the ocean. The trips are shorter, the food's fresher, you could drink the water, sort of, and the discipline is a lot slacker. I mean, the captain's still God, but he knows that the crew can quit if they want. And it's a lot easier to hitchhike home from Hamilton than Cape Town. So that's what this song's all about. And it didn't come with a tune when I found it. It was just a set of words. And I set it to an Irish tune, called, which you'll probably recognize, called The Star of the County Down. If ever I follow the ships again to gather my spuds and cakes, I'll not be working a deep sea hack. It's me for the inland lakes. You get a berth that's really a berth, and the jaw that the skipper takes. No, and I swear it's a wonderful life. It's me for the inland lakes. Well, the runs are short, the vessels are good, and fine men are your mates. They're sharp and they can handle a ship. It's me for the inland lakes. You get a berth that's really a berth, and the jaw that the skipper takes. No end, I swear, it's a wonderful life. It's me for the inland lakes. $3 a day, that's the sailor's pay, way better than ocean freights. When the season's done, you go on the bum, it's me for the inland lakes. You get a berth that's really a berth, and the jaw that the skipper takes. No end, I swear, it's a wonderful life. It's me for the inland lakes. Late gales may blow, the seas may rise, and the lee is full of country chase. But the vessels are warm, and the grub is fine. It's me for the inland lakes. You get a berth that's really a berth, and the jaw that the skipper takes. No end, I swear, it's a wonderful life. It's me for the inland lakes. Yes, you get a bird that's really a bird, and the job that the skipper takes. No end, I swear it's a wonderful life. It's me for the inland lakes. I later heard a whole other tune to that, which may have been the original tune, but I decided I liked this one better, so I kept it. A couple of years ago, my excellent spouse Judy was working on an archaeological dig down at Fort Erie, down at the not the is that the head? Anyway, at the end of Lake Erie. And that was one of the first places that, Lake Erie was an important lake in the old days because it was sort of access to the west. And that was one of the first places they built a little port so that schooners and other small boats could head down to Detroit. And what they were digging out was the very first Fort Erie, not the one that you see when you go down to visit today. That was built after the fact. Johnny come lately. That wasn't built till 1804. And what they were digging up, which was actually in the parking lot, just like Richard III, was the original fort that had been built by the British right after the 7 Years' War, 1760 something, really early for that sort of thing in Ontario. And one time she called me up, fairly close to the beginning, and she and her partner had been digging in their square. And they found a coin, which are always great things for dating a site. And the coin had one of the King Georges, but it wasn't George III. It was George II. And the coin was an Irish halfpenny, a halfpenny from 1762, with this picture of King George II on the back. And I just thought that was the neatest thing. I'd never seen a coin that old in Canada. And I started wondering, well, who had it? And what the hell did he think he was going to spend it on? Where did he think he was going to spend it in Fort Erie? But it made me think of this. It made me think of this song, which is an Ontario version of an Irish song called 9 Years a Soldier. It's sometimes called, there's a version called the Kerry Recruit. And it talks about, this guy, could have brought that coin in his pocket all the way from Ireland, although he might just as easily have picked it up on this side of the ocean too, I guess. But that was how a lot of people ended up here, was as part of the British Army. And this song tells the story of a young Irishman who's out digging turf, digging peat. He gets bored with that in the middle of the first verse, and he goes off to a fair where he ends up joining the British Army accidentally, which was entirely possible in those days. It doesn't actually mention it in the song, but I'm pretty sure there's a beer tent involved at the fair. And after a pint of Guinness or 10, the guy wakes up the next morning and discovers he's joined the army. And he's looking back, 9 years later, thinking, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. It's got a chorus that goes, you can sing along with. Goes, musha-doo-doo-y-ah, sing fall the dew a day. Musha-doo-doo-y-ah, sing fall the dew a day. Which I've done serious research on, and I discovered it's Irish for doodah doodah. All right. 9 years ago, I was digging at the land with my brogues on my feet and a shovel in my hand. Said I to myself, such a pity for to see fine Irish laddie digging turf all day. Musha-doo-doo-y-ah, sing fall the dew a day. Musha-doo-doo-y-ah, sing fall the dew a day. Brushed up my brook, shook hands with my spade. I went off to the fair like a courting young blade. First man I met, he asked me to enlist. Said I, Grandma Cree, give a soldier your fist. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. And the next man I met, he gave me a coat with a stiff bit of leather to go round my throat. Gave me a queer thing, I asked what was that, and they said that it was a cockade for my hat. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. The next man I met, he gave me a gun with powder and shot and a place for my thumb. First a spitfire and then came the smoke. Gave my shoulder such a devil of a poke. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. At Vinegar Hill, I had bad luck. My dusty old brogues got stuck in the muck. Stood on my head for fear of being shot, and I fell on my belly and went flop, flop, flop. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll for the do-a-day. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. And it's often I think of my mother at home. When I was there, I was never alone. 9 years a soldier, thank God it wasn't 10. I'll go back to old Irelandic Murphys again. Mush-a-doo-doo-y, I'll sing for the do-a-day. 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 I think that was who did I learn that from? The singing of a fella named Tom Brandon, I think, who was Edith Folk, the great folklorist, collected that from him. He lived around Lakefield, I think. And what do we got? Oh, we got another immigration song. So that was a song about immigrating as a soldier. This is one about the sort of more usual method. And what did I just do? I just bumped something. Hang on. There. Sorry, something just came up in the middle of my screen that wasn't me. Can't have that. This is a song. It actually is a song that was used as a sea shanty. It's got one of those choruses so you can sing along. And God knows, sea shanties are popular these days, or at least they were 2 weeks ago. That may have been all past at this point. I had when all that hit. It was funny how it was all. There was the sea shanties. And then Bernie Sanders and his mitts, and Bernie Sanders and his mitts pretty much drove the sea shanties off the face of the earth. But before Bernie and his mitts came along, there was one day where I did 6 radio interviews for every regional CBC morning show in Ontario. So let me tell you that the sales soared. We made tens of dollars off that, and but this is a sea shanty. It's called "Heave Away My Johnnies," or if you want to be more authentic, "Me Johnnies." Heave away, my Johnnies, heave away. It's unusual for a shanty. Most shanties have kind of generic words that are completely interchangeable. A lot of shanties, I mean, they're not so much songs as they are templates for songs, where the chorus and the refrains remain the same, but, a good shantyman would just make stuff up in between. But this one actually tells a narrative story, quite a a pretty complex, not complex, but a complete story about a young woman um, coming from Liverpool to Canada on a ship in I guess maybe 1830s or 40s, and but it's kind of fun. It tells the whole story, and you can sing along. I expect to see you swaying back and forth, and if you've got a mug of Guinness, this is the time to raise it up and wave it around. As I rode out one summer's morn down by the salt house dock, heave away, mid Johnnies, heave away. I met an Irish immigrant girl conversing with Tapscott, and away me bully boys, we're all bound to go. Good morning, Mr. Tapscott, good morning, my gal, said he. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. It's have you got any immigrant ships bound out for Canada? And away, me bully boys, we're all bound to go. Ah, yes, I've got a packet ship, and I've got one or two. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. I got the Jenny Walker and I got the Kangaroo, and away me bully boys, we're all bound to go. I got the Jenny Walker and today she do set sail. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. With 55 immigrants and 1,000 bags of meal, and away me bully boys, we're all bound to go. That night as we were sailing up the channel by St. James, heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. A dirty northwest wind come up and blew us back again, and away, me bully boys, we're all bound to go. We snugged her down and lashed her to, and reefed main topsail set. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. It wasn't a joke, I tell you, for our clothes and our bunks was wet. And away, me bully boys, we're all bound to go. But the weather was fine next morning, we set sail once more. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. And every immigrant sure was glad to reach old Canada's shore. And away, me bully boys, we're all bound to go. And now I'm up at Bytown, working on the canal. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. To work again in a packet ship, I'm sure I never shall. And away, me bully boys, we're all bound to go. But I'll ride home in a national boat that carries both steam and sail. Heave away, me Johnnies, heave away. With lashings of corned beef every day and none of your yellow meal. Heave away, me bully boys, we're all bound to go. And away, me bully boys, we're all bound to go. I could never figure out whether that ship was carrying bags of mail or bags of meal, which I guess it could have been either. Let's see. Oh, what do we got next? We've got a song with lots of local content, lots of Irish content too. Actually, the tune is definitely Irish derived, and kind of the I don't know, just the attitude of the song is too. This is one of my favorites. When I was working down at the Port Dover Harbor Museum, people used to bring stuff in. I'm sure they still do. And somebody brought in an amazing photograph that had been found. Somebody in an old house in Simcoe, somebody had moved a mantelpiece, and this was an old photograph, I'd say from maybe 1900, that had slipped down behind the mantelpiece, and it was a port, and I'm not sure which port. I'm guessing it might have been Tonawanda, just because that was where lumber and timber went. And it was a couple of schooners and a big barkentine, big three-masted bark, and a steamer all at the dock with mountains of timber on the deck and mountains of timber on the docks behind. And I always think about that picture when I sing this song. This is a song about a timber boat named the Jenny P. King, which was one that worked out of Buffalo, worked out of Tonawanda actually. And the reason Tonawanda was the lumber port was because that was the mouth of the Erie Canal, and ships and barges would go from Long Point. You wonder where all the pine trees on Long Point went? They all went to Tonawanda, and they got sawn into lumber, and they got shipped down the Erie Canal, and some of them are probably holding up roofs in old buildings in New York City. And so the Jenny P. King was supposedly named after a woman from Buffalo. There was a famous part of Buffalo called Canal Street. That was the part of Buffalo that even saltwater sailors who, hung out in every disreputable port in the world were afraid of Canal Street. It was Buffalo was one of those towns that a lot of the people who were there at any given time didn't actually live there, so they didn't have to answer to their neighbors. There were, sailors passing back and forth and railway men, and Canal Street was a pretty sketchy area. And apparently Jenny P. King was a businesswoman who worked on Canal Street. And they named the boat after her. And supposedly this particular vessel, for a figurehead, it didn't actually have a head. What it had was a shapely woman's carved leg, wooden carving underneath the bowsprit. I always picture, remember that lamp in the movie A Christmas Story? I picture something like that sticking out over the bow of the ship. But this is a neat song because it talks about going and picking up lumber and taking it back to Tonawanda, and that's kind of interesting, at least to a nerd like me. But it also talks about the sorts of crews that were on Great Lakes vessels. And they were, it was a much more multicultural work environment than a lot of people had in those days, which was just like the ships on the ocean. You would have people from every country and every background working shoulder to shoulder on these boats, and as long as you could do the work, you could have the job. And it talks about that. It talks about, towards the end, it talks about the lad that tended the horses. And a lot of these schooners, part of the crew was often a pair of horses or often mules that they would keep on board for doing things like towing them up a canal if they needed towing up a canal, or sometimes even loading cargoes on, because the schooners didn't have a huge crew. It wasn't like Johnny Depp and Pirates of the Caribbean where there's 300 guys crawling all over the ship. There were maybe half a dozen. So having a horse could be useful. And it talks about the cook, which was the cook was usually a woman. She was often the steward of the ship as well, which meant sort of pay officer, bookkeeper, CEO in a business sort of a way. Anyway, the Jenny P. King. It's a short song, but it'll be better if it's in tune. Come boys, if you will listen, I'll sing to you a song. So sit you down a while and I'll not detain you long. I shipped in Tonawanda some lumber for to bring from Long Point to $1 a day on the bark the Jenny King. Hurrah, me boys, hurrah! Come let us dance and sing. We'll drink a health to old Ned Irving, the bark the Jenny King. The crew jumped in the rigging and up aloft did run to see them ride the halyards down. I tell you it was fun. Each man working with the will. Soon we spread our wings. We beat the schooner Dispatch on the bark the Jenny King. Hurrah, me boys, hurrah! Come let us dance and sing. We'll drink a health to old Ned Irving and the bark the Jenny King. And on this timber droger we had a jiggle crew. And Uncle Sam's the fighters, Garibaldi's too. An Irishman from nowhere, he could dance and sing, and shellbacks from the ocean on the bark the Jenny King. Hurrah, me boys, hurrah! Come let us dance and sing. We'll drink a health to old Ned Irving and the bark the Jenny King. And on this timber droger were Canadians too, I think, a Dutch from Tonawanda who like their lager drink, and men from other countries who like to have a fling. You know we had a jolly crew on the bark the Jenny King. Hurrah, me boys, hurrah! Come let's dance and sing. We'll drink a health to old Ned Irving and the bark the Jenny King. The lads who tended the horses, they jabbered all the day. What they tried to tell us, we couldn't really say. Our cook was from the Erie, she was just the thing. She fed the crew and the officers too on the bark the Jenny King. Hurrah, me boys, hurrah! Come let us dance and sing. We'll drink a health to old Ned Irving and the bark the Jenny King. Hurrah, me boys, hurrah! Come let us dance and sing. We'll drink a health to old Ned Irving and the bark the Jenny King. The Jenny P. King. I'm going to do a couple of tunes now. I hope you can see that. I'm going to play the concertina. I tried to arrange the camera so that you can at least see the top of it. So it just didn't look like I was pulling up my socks while I was playing. So I'm going to play a couple of jigs, all good Irish tunes. First one's called Donnybrook Fair. Hey, we got one of those around here, don't we? This is undoubtedly named after the actual Donnybrook Fair in Donnybrook, Ireland. And the second tune is a jig called Paddy Carey's Jig that, I can't remember where that came from. And the last tune is a tune called the Halfpenny Reel. Yeah, we were talking about Irish halfpennies before. And it's an old Irish tune. I actually got it off my pal Max Swackhammer brought over a big bunch of old Don Messer 78s. And really old ones from the late 30s, early 40s. And luckily I have a 78 player to play them on, and listen to that and really like this one called the Halfpenny Reel, Halfpenny Reel. So while I'm playing Donnybrook Fair, feel free to have a fight if you want. Well, I'm gonna move that. Donny Brook Fair and the Halfpenny Reel, and in between Paddy Carey's jig. So I'm going to try something here that I've never tried performing before. Not this bit, this is just tuning. J.R. Frost, he always says, it's never too late to tune. Well, he usually says that in the middle of a song where he stopped to tune. I'm not totally convinced I agree with him on that. So another thing somebody brought in when I was down at the Port Dover Harbor Museum was a little spool of tape. It was reel-to-reel, quarter-inch tape, about a 3-inch in diameter reel, small little reel. And what it was a recording that had been made at a party in about 1961. And I do wish I could remember who brought this in, but just off the top of my head, I can't. But it was a recording of a party in Port Dover in 1961. And I thought, well, this will be interesting no matter what's on it. But what was on it was about half a dozen songs sung a cappella, just unaccompanied, by Square Jim McDonald, who was this pretty legendary Port Dover commercial fisherman. So this is Square Jim the Younger. There was Square Jim the Elder, who died in the early 20th century, and Square Jim the Younger, who I guess probably would have been born in about in the 1890 something, right? So he wasn't that younger, but and he was the dad of Beer Bottle McDonald, but that's a whole other song. And Square Jim sang the tape started off with two really pretty rude songs that you can find on the Ontario Traditional Music website, but you're not going to hear from me tonight. And then some things like I Belong to Glasgow and Danny Boy. And you could tell that the tape had been made over the course of the evening, and right at the end, and this must have been towards the end of the party, he sang this famous Great Lakes disaster song called "The Schooner Persia's Crew," and it was so neat to hear somebody who had lived not far from where I grew up singing this this song that I knew of from other people. So I've learned Square Jim's version of that, and the melody's a little different than usual, but as I said, folk songs aren't songs; they're templates for songs, and it's one of those songs that. Talks about a very particular disaster, and this was a ship called the Persia, and it was on its way from Chicago to Oswego, which is just right across the lake from Kingston, and ran into trouble up at the top end of Lake Huron somewhere, and disappeared without a trace. And it was a pretty famous song, and there are lots of versions of it, but this is Square Jim McDonald's. How sad and mournful is the tale that now I'll tell to you. It's of the schooner Persia, her officers and crew, how they sank beneath the stormy deep, in life to rise no more, where the winds in desolation sweep Lake Huron's rocky shore. They left Chicago in the morn, their songs they did resound. Their hearts were full of joy and glee, for they were homeward bound. They little thought the sword of death would meet them on the way, or that they so full of mirth and joy in Lake Huron would lay. I do not know those sailors' names, except for one or two. I do not know those sailors' names, they were a luckless crew. They sank beneath the stormy deep, in life to rise no more, where the winds in desolation sweep Lake Huron's rock-bound shore. Dan Sullivan was our first mate's name, a man both bold and brave, as ever was consigned by fate to fill a sailor's grave. He sank beneath the stormy deep, in life to rise no more, where the winds in desolation sweep Lake Huron's rock-bound shore. Oh Dan, we'll miss you now around Oswego town. Oh Dan, your many friends will mourn, your fate on them will frown. We'll miss the sly glance of your eye, your hand will clasp no more, for in the deep you now do sleep, far from your own home shore. There's no sisters nor no brothers there to wipe away your tears, no fathers nor no mothers there to fill your hearts with cheer. They sank beneath the stormy deep, in life to rise no more, where the winds in desolation sweep Lake Huron's rock-bound shore. In mystery their tale is sealed, they did collide, some say, but this is not to be revealed until the judgment day, until the angels take their stands and search the water through. They'll bring forth the commander and the gallant Persian's crew. They'll bring forth the commander and the gallant Persian's crew. That's a sad song, ain't it? The one of many. There are an awful lot of songs like that. I think we better cheer things up. Let's see. And what better way to cheer things up than by playing the concertina some more? There's I talked about Ivan Walton's collection, the fellow who collected all the songs. He never published it in his lifetime. It sat as a folder in various drawers, including Barry O'Neill's, and he made some copies and gave me one. Finally, just maybe 15 years ago, it was published as a beautiful book called Windjammers, and a companion book called Songcatcher that talks about him. It's his notes from actually going out and meeting these old sailors, and it's wonderful reading these stories. And he talks about how if sailors could play an instrument, they they were popular on the ship. I mean, if you could play a banjo or a fiddle when you weren't actually working, you'd sit on the hatch cover and basically serve as the car radio for the other sailors. And when he got into town, he said what would often happen would sailors would sit up on the rail of the boat and they'd play tunes. People would come down to the dock and maybe pitch them some money, but with any luck, invite you up to the Norfolk Tavern, install you there to play tunes there and buy you drinks for the rest of the night. And so, the sorts of songs that would have been sung were the sorts of songs that you might also have heard in a lumber camp. Fact is, a lot of it was the same people. The people who were the guys who worked in the lumber camps were often the same people who worked on the schooners in the summer, and in the winter they'd move up to the camps. And I'm going to do a song that sort of comes out of that tradition, an Irish Ontario song, an Ontario version of an Irish song. This is one, if you've heard me, you've probably heard this song, but it tells the old story. Boy meets girl, boy propositions girl, girl says, yeah, okay, and goes up to her room to wait, where we are told there is a chair, and under the chair is crockery ware. And if you stop to think about what sort of crockery ware might be under a chair in a 19th century bedroom, you'll realize we're not talking about a casserole, right? And so later on in the song, the boy comes visiting in the middle of the night, as they do, and he trips over the chair, tumbles into the crockery ware. Pandemonium ensues. Mother wakes up. Boy gives lamest excuse for being there that you can imagine. And ultimately the police are called. A young man came from Belfast town, he courted a gal when she was young. Young man came from Belfast town, courted a gal when she was young. He asked her for a favour bright, she would sleep with him that night. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O, to me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. Well, this young girl, she gave consent. Straight upstairs to her room she went. This young girl, she gave consent. Straight upstairs to her room she went. In the room there was a chair. Under the chair was crockery ware. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. Well, this young man came round in the night, searching for his heart's delight. This young man came round in the night, searching for his heart's delight. He stubbed his toe upon the chair, tumbled into the crockery ware. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. Well, the old woman, she got up in a fright, searched around for the candlelight. The old woman, she got up in a fright and searched around for the candlelight. She said, young man, what you doing there? Breaking all of the crockery ware. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. He said, old woman, now don't be cross. I miss my way and I fear I'm lost. Said, old woman, now don't be cross. Missed my way and I fear I'm lost. Missed my way, I do declare. Broke my shin on the crockery ware. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. The police were called at the break of day. See what the young man had to pay. The police were called at the break of day. See what the young man had to pay. $1 for a broken chair and £1.10 for the crockery ware. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. So come all you rakes and rambling sports, toes a courting in the dark. Come all you rakes and rambling sports, toes a courting in the dark. Don't stub your toe on the chair, or else you'll suffer from the crockery ware. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. To me rye whack fall, diddle-I-G-O. What do we got here? Let's see. How are we doing for time? Oh gosh, we're getting close. Let's sing a song. So this is one that it's actually become popular, I guess is a relative thing, but Great Big Sea did a recording of it. I first heard it from Stu Cameron and also from Lennox Gavin. Lennox Gavin was a singer and a bartender who ran the bar in Quéant, Quebec, and just across the Ottawa River from sort of, I guess, Arnprior-ish there. And I remember going through Quéant when I was working at the museum, and we had picked up some of the artifacts from the steamer Atlantic in Ottawa, and it was part of a weekend that involved other things. It was kind of cold. It was November. It was winter. It was cold and dark and gray, and we drove up the Quebec side to Quéant and came across on the ferry over to the Ontario side, across the Ottawa River. And I remember looking at all this priceless stuff from the shipwreck in the back of the car, and looking at the ferry we were on, and looking at the gray water of the Ottawa River and thinking, wow, wouldn't it be ironic? But it didn't. We got there. And anyway, Lennox was a great singer. He knew all kinds of old Irish music hall songs. And he used to come to the Mariposa Folk Festival back in the early 70s. And it was amazing hearing him sing these songs. And so this is basically Lennox's version of The Night That Paddy Murphy Died. Whoa, the night that Paddy Murphy died, it's a night I'll never regret. Some of the boys got roaring drunk and some not sober yet. As long as the bottle was passed around and everyone feeling gay, till O'Leary came with the bagpipes, some music for to play. Mrs. Murphy sat in the corner pouring out her grief, while Kelly and his friends, that dirty roving thief, they crept into the anteroom and a bottle of whiskey stole. They put the bottle on the corpse to keep the liquor cold. That's how they showed their respect for Paddy Murphy. That's how they showed their honor and their pride. They said it was a sin and a shame, and they winked at one another. Well, everything in the wake house went the night Pat Murphy died. At 2 o'clock in the morning, some dirty blue-eyed scamp rode upon the coffin lid. There lies a tramp. They stopped the clock so Mrs. Murphy would know the time. And at 3:15, they told her it was 9. And then the gang got rowdy and they didn't give a thread. Mrs. Murphy said that she would wait till all that gang was dead. Of all the things I ever saw that made me shiver with fear, they took the ice from off the corpse and put it on the beer. That's how they showed their respect for Paddy Murphy. That's how they showed their honor and their pride. They said it was a sin and a shame, and they winked at one another. Well, everything in the wake house went the night Pat Murphy died. Well, someone hollered for the cops and they busted through the door. They jumped upon poor Paddy's corpse and knocked it to the floor. They bopped him twice behind the ear and they kicked him in the head. And when they got up from his back, sure they found out he was dead. Well, Mrs. Murphy then began to battle with them cops. She lit at them and one of them she kicked him several blocks. A lovely time was had by all 18, of course were tried for having caused a riot on the night Pat Murphy died. That's how they showed their respect for Paddy Murphy. That's how they showed their honor and their pride. They said it was a sin and a shame and they winked at one another. Well, everything in the wake house went the night Pat Murphy died. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the funeral left the house. Everyone but poor old Mrs. Murphy was half soused. And on the way to the grave, they stopped at the old Red Dog Saloon. They went in there at 9 o'clock and they didn't come out till noon. Well, someone asked old Mulligan if anyone had died. Well, he said, I'm not too sure, I just came for the ride. They all went off to the grave, all in a very straight line. But when they got to the hole they found, they'd left the corpse behind. That's how they showed their respect for Paddy Murphy. That's how they showed their honor and their pride. They said it was a sin and a shame and they winked at one another. Well, everything in the wake house went the night Pat Murphy died. I have a feeling I left a verse out. Next time you see me, remind me about it and I'll sing it for you. The wait didn't seem to go on for as long as I remember it. Well, I think this wake's gone on for about as long as it should. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Angela, for organizing the technical end of it. I'll do one more tune at the end here to finish off. I got these lovely, I mentioned my pal Tayar Frost from Shisham and Lotus, and he makes bones. Well, listen, he doesn't actually make them, he recycles them. And he made me this, I had a nice set of bones that I gave to my nephew Andrew, who's an orchestral percussionist. And he plays with, the Youth Symphony. And I've been equipping him with things that I think he may need in life, like bones and washboards and nose flutes and jaw harps. So that I gave him my nice ones. I have a feeling these may be really loud on the mic, but we'll see. And we'll use the bones. We'll use the harmonica, and we'll use the jaw harp, or juice harp, or trump, or en français, un gambard. Sounds very classy in French. Whatever you call it, it makes the same sensitive and romantic music. And I'm going to finish off with a fiddle tune, without a fiddle. And, thank you for your kind attention, and we'll see you around when the plague's over. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening. It was wonderful.